300,000 men stretch across the plain in front of him. Some ancient writers claimed the true number was even higher. He has less than 50,000. In a few hours, one of these two men will lose his empire. The other is 25 years old, and he's about to make a decision so bold that historians would study it for the next 2,000 years. He will charge straight at the enemy king, through the heart of his own army. It's the 1st of October, 331 BC. The place is a dusty plain near a village called Gaugamela, in what is now northern Iraq. Behind the tents of the Macedonian army, torches flicker in the dark. Across miles of flat, leveled ground, the campfires of the Persian Empire stretch to the horizon, so many that Macedonian soldiers said the light looked like a second sunset. 2 years earlier, Alexander of Macedon had crossed into Asia with an army that had never lost a battle under him. At the Granicus River, he shattered a Persian force in a single afternoon. At Issus, he faced the Persian king himself, Darius III, and sent him running from the battlefield, abandoning his own mother, wife, and children in his haste to escape. Darius offered peace, territory, even his daughter's hand in marriage. Alexander refused every offer. He wanted the whole empire.
So the Persian king tried something desperate. He chose this battlefield himself. For weeks, his engineers leveled the earth, clearing rocks and smoothing hills, because his newest weapon needed a perfect surface. Scythed chariots, their wheels fitted with long curved blades, designed to cut through infantry like a plow through wheat. The night before the battle, Alexander's general Parmenion urged a surprise attack under cover of darkness, while the Persians were still exhausted from standing in formation. Alexander refused. He is said to have answered that he would not steal his victory. He wanted to win in daylight, with no question about how it happened. That choice nearly cost him everything. At dawn, the two armies faced each other across the open plain. The Persian line stretched so far beyond the Macedonian flanks that it threatened to swallow them whole. Darius had gathered soldiers from every corner of his empire, cavalry from the eastern steppes, infantry from Egypt, archers from the mountains of Persia, and in the center, his scythed chariots waited, ready to charge. Alexander did something unexpected. Instead of meeting the Persian line head-on, he marched his army sideways, at an angle, pulling Darius's forces further and further from the ground they had prepared. Worried about being outflanked, Darius sent his own cavalry to match the movement. The Persian line began to stretch thin. And near the center, close to where Darius stood in his golden chariot, a gap started to open. Alexander saw it. The scythed chariots finally charged, but Alexander's men had trained for this.
Javelin throwers stepped forward and brought down the horses before the blades ever reached the infantry. The Macedonian ranks simply opened lanes and let the empty chariots rattle harmlessly through. Then Alexander made his move. He gathered his elite companion cavalry, formed them into a tight wedge, and drove them straight for that opening in the Persian line, straight toward the king himself. The charge tore through the gap like a spear through cloth. For one brief, chaotic moment, across a wall of dust and screaming horses, Alexander and Darius were staring at each other again, just as they had 2 years earlier at Issus. And Darius broke first. He turned his chariot and fled the battlefield, abandoning his own army in the middle of the fight. When the center of an ancient army loses its king, it loses its reason to keep fighting. Word spread through the Persian ranks in seconds. If the king is running, why are we still dying? The Persian center began to collapse into panic. But the battle wasn't finished, and Alexander was about to face the hardest decision of the entire day. On the Macedonian left flank, Parmenian's forces were in serious trouble. Persian and Scythian cavalry had encircled them, and riders were racing across the battlefield to find Alexander, begging him to turn back before the left wing was destroyed. Alexander was in full pursuit of Darius. He was closer than he had ever been to ending the entire war in a single stroke. Capturing the Persian king here could finish the empire in one afternoon. But his own men were dying on the other side of the field. He turned back. Alexander pulled his cavalry away from the chase and rode to save Parmenian's collapsing flank. By the time the fighting there was won, night was falling, and Darius had vanished into the darkness with a handful of loyal riders, escaping east. Alexander had won the battle. He had not won the man. The scale of the victory became clear in the weeks that followed. Babylon opened its gates without a fight. Susa, one of the great treasuries of the Persian Empire, surrendered its staggering wealth. Persepolis, the ceremonial heart of Persian kings, fell soon after. In a matter of months, an empire that had stood for 2 centuries, that had once invaded Greece itself, simply stopped existing as anyone had known it. Darius never got to see how his story ended. Fleeing east, betrayed by his own governor, Bessus, he was struck down less than a year later, dying alone and abandoned by the men who once called him King of Kings. Alexander, 25 years old, was now ruler of the largest empire the world had ever seen, stretching from Greece to the edge of India. He began wearing elements of Persian royal dress and adopted Persian court customs, a decision that would quietly unsettle his own Macedonian officers for years to come. But the deeper impact of that single morning on the plain of Gaugamela went far beyond one man's crown. Greek language, art, and ideas spread across Persia, Egypt, and Central Asia, blending with local cultures to create something entirely new, a Hellenistic world that would shape science, philosophy, and trade for the next 3 centuries. All of it traces back to one moment: a 25-year-old king, staring at a narrow gap in an enemy line 1,000 times his army's size, and deciding to ride straight through it